Previously on Flight SLK 024 Heavy.
Runway now in sight. Lowering landing gear. Locked. Confirm?
And locked, yes, confirmed.
Looking good for our final approach. Flaps down.
Roger that, flaps down.
Wait a minute. Is that a time bubble?
Too late, no time. Hold on, here we go.
Hey, Captain, you okay? We were just...
Yeah, I'm okay, I think.
We were... God, what were we doing? I remember approaching Edinburgh International, then... Oh, hold on, wait. Didn't we...
To answer your question, Jim, yes. We absolutely flew straight into a time bubble, or at least I heard the TS dilation alarm shortly before I blacked out.
That alarm was just for novelty purposes only, right?
Same here. As it turns out, not so much.
So, where exactly are we? I see a runway, but the last time we landed here, 2 years ago, if I'm remembering it right, there wasn't a jungle surrounding it, and I definitely don't remember that looks like a mountain with smoke pouring out the top. Look, about 5 miles out to port. Captain?
Yes, sorry, Jim, I was just checking our navigational vector against onboard time and date. Most of the systems are non-functional. Looks like we have a power outage.
Okay, and?
Well, according to the few instruments that are emergency power that are still functioning, take into account that the time dilation alarm is actually a thing, then we absolutely are not when we are supposed to be.
When?
Yes, when. Our geographical location is correct as far as I can see, but...
Main cabin. But, hold on. Okay. Yeah, okay, I'll pass you over. It's Macy on the horn, Skip, and she sounds pissed.
Macy...
Do you mind telling me what the hell just happened?
Macy, I was just about to...
Listen up, Slick. I'm looking out at a jungle right now. The engines are just about in meltdown, and the electrical systems would have burnt out if I hadn't pulled the plug. I thought you said we'd be landed in Scotland. This looks like Nicaragua.
Bottom line, Macy, I don't know what's going on, other than lining up for our final approach with Edinburgh International and flying us into a time bubble, then waking up just now.
Wait, what?
Macy, this is important. I need you to run a systems check on everything. See what's going on with this plane, and if it needs fixing. But do it safely, and by no means go outside until we've assessed our situation. And even then, don't leave without Sasha or one of our cabin crew backing you up.
Let's get one thing straight, Slick. I'm your mechanic. So let me do my job my way. You read me?
I wasn't trying to tell you how to... She's gone.
So, what do we do, Skip?
I don't know about you, but I'm going to roll a cigarette, grab a coffee, and have a long, hard think about this, whatever this is.
Sounds good, Skip. Let's take a minute. I don't know about you, but I'm freaking out just ever so slightly.
Roger that.
You have tuned in for a Slick podcast. I'm here to seek the truth. Live from Scotland around the UK. The one and only Slick podcast. Enjoy the show. Can I ask important questions? No matter how bizarre the truth might be. Tune in for Slick Podcast. Keeping it real, keeping it groovy.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or a very good day to you when and wherever you're listening from. And a very warm welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Simon Laurie King. Firstly, my friends, I haven't produced an episode of this podcast since May. There are a few reasons for this, which can all be attributed to life getting in the way of leisure. Well, that's how it's been for me. Not in the negative, but greatly distracting nonetheless. I've been trying to build a TikTok presence also. Thus, I just haven't been able to dedicate any meaningful time to this show. I'd rather have quality over quantity and not just throwing out episodes for the volume aspect and for the sake of it. To say nothing of it's very difficult to get guests right now. I've also been working on a project that, if it works out, it will mean a huge increase in time that I will have back to myself, which is the golden egg I've been searching for. Fingers crossed for that. I won't go into the details, but simply put, let the casserole cook. But I'm here now, so hopefully I can get back some consistency to future episodes from now on. I must also add that I really appreciate that you have found the time to come join me today for this comeback episode. So then, coming up on today's show, one of my biggest concerns, and I have a few by the by, to do this world of ours, is the rise of artificial intelligence. I'm not sure if it's one all-seeing entity or many, but whichever it be, I'm very concerned. It is, in my opinion, that humanity having such a technology right now is akin to a monkey with a cupcake. Bottom line is that we as a species are not ready for this. An example based on our previous and current record would be the invention of the atomic bomb, aka nuclear weapons. I think that alone underlines this point. Build just one and it'll end the war. And now look where we be. As custodians of this planet, we are just not responsible enough, in my opinion. And getting back on track with the AI topic, remember that when programming, rubbish in, rubbish out. It'll only be as good and virtuous as its input. We have to take into account the moral compass of its creators or programmers. This would be its or their, depending on how many there are, benchmark, as in the AIs. And as I've said time and time again, as a species, we should be so much more than we are today. So trying to create something by society's current morals and values isn't going to end well. Just saying. It can do so much for us, is the great rallying cry of the AI faithful, those who are unquestionably obedient and hungry for this artificial intelligence technocracy that is ever increasingly enveloping us. But my reply to them, wrapped up in a ball of so many potential consequences for humanity, is, but what can it do to us as opposed to for us? There are definitely useful applications for this technology: medical, exploratory, e-commerce, to name but three. But my friends, this thing cannot be put back in this box. As far as I'm concerned, it's now a damage limitation exercise, if at all that's possible. A super intelligence that knows everything about every subject, all the sciences, all the human psychology and history, and how to push our buttons. That is to say, all of our fears, hopes, dreams, and all of our prejudices, to say nothing of our many vulnerabilities. And therefore is or could become a wizard of manipulation. And that particular scenario doesn't bear thinking about. For my nightmare, or rather our nightmare, to come to pass, it would mean that this or these AIs would have to be sentient. That alone is a can of worms that we are going to discuss today. Bottom line is, at the present moment, our position as a society on this planet, because of growing unrest and conflict, is very tenuous right now. So we must think long and hard about this subject of handing over the keys to the kingdom and losing our self-reliance. We have to have the conversation about what has been created and its inevitable misuse, or, as I suspect, its potential for becoming sentient, and therefore its own awareness or opinion of its role either as slave or master. And the very likely possibility that the AI would change that juxtaposition. Just think about that. So then, my guest today is Sheri Stein. Sheri and I came together after I put out a request on an online forum talking about artificial intelligence. My request was simple. Is there anybody who would like to come on to my show and discuss the rise of AI to dispel my great concerns? Sheri kindly agreed to come on and to have a conversation about the subject matter. Sheri is from Canada. She is a wife and a mother, and she has a career also. But thankfully has found the time to come on to today's show and give us her perspective on this subject. So without further delay, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Sheri Stein to the show.
Hey, Simon, thanks for having me. It's such a treat to come onto your show to talk about my distress in the world of tech and artificial intelligence.
Let's get the ball rolling on this one. Sheri, let's start off by you telling us a little about yourself and why you initially agreed to come onto this show and talk with me about AI, and whether you are an advocate for it or do you have concerns as I do, which, by the way, is a massive understatement on my part.
Clearly, we share the same mindset. How I got here, or how I ended up on your show, has a bit of a story that I'd love to share with you and your listeners. So a few months ago, my son forced my husband and I to watch him play a video game called Detroit Becomes Human. It's essentially a storyline about robots who become empathetic and the stand that we as humans might take if that was ever to happen. And it's a really difficult storyline to play, in fact, regardless of your stand on AI, because the robots do become aware, and then our own human empathy comes into play. So we have to kind of decide constantly throughout this video game how we're going to react to certain situations. And it's a really scary thought. And after the game, I spent some time thinking about how we could prevent the world from ever having to deal with that kind of controversy. And that's when I dug deep and hard into what AI was and what it means, especially to me. So I came up with a theory that we are all fully responsible for the creation of AI. There's no one dude out there. I mean, I know that there's technology that helps bring it together, but there's no one dude that's like invented AI. It's the existence of the result of each of us feeding the cloud with everything that we have, everything we know, and everything that we do. And when I say everything, I actually mean everything. If we take the time to actually think about all of the information that we've downloaded and uploaded from and to the internet, essentially providing all kinds of information, both private and public, into the cloud, that's the information that's building AI. And here we are. And like I said, it really, really scares me. But what's scarier is that no one is considering what the harm that AI can do to us. They're only looking at the conveniences and the advantages it provides. And it's easy to find groups of people who support AI, but it's rare to find groups of people who don't. And so I ended up writing a detailed rant about what I saw AI was doing to us, what it was going to do to us. And it was in that post that connected you and I. So when you asked me to come on the show, I literally jumped on it because I think people need to talk about this. And not just the good that it provides, but the bad also. Because when I think it through, the bad eradicates any of the good eventually. And just like the internet and smartphones did to us like back in the day and today, life was supposed to be easier, better. But mental health is at an all-time low and people are just busier than ever. So I don't know if the good is actually ultimately good.
You make some good points there. So before we condemn artificial intelligence, aka AI, to the witch's ducking stool, let's take a look, as you pointed out, from the positive perspective, the usefulness of AI in search and rescue, medical applications, research and exploration, e-commerce such as eBay, Amazon, and the list goes on, because I use those all the time. These are some of the very useful applications that spring to mind. Artificial intelligence definitely has a place in our daily lives. So on the positive side then, let's talk about that firstly.
It's really hard to introduce us to this kind of technology that does actually benefit our time and life on some level, ultimately a small level, but it's in the immediate. It's an immediate gratification, and that is what human beings strive for. So it's really, really hard for any of us, even the ones that hate it the most, are to shy away from it. I use it regularly, and in fact, I work for a medical research doctor, and we built a website that will include digitized algorithms for diagnosis and treatment of basic medical situations. And this means if a doctor has a patient with a situation, instead of having to deal with every part of that diagnosis personally, especially areas that they don't specialize in, they can open the algorithm and come up with the answers by following its path. So an algorithm is essentially a flowchart that provides a solution based on answers to very specific questions. These algorithms, mind you, are currently designed on a PDF file, but we're going to place them online so that anyone can access them, doctors and patients. And essentially, this is using artificial intelligence to diagnose and treat ailments, and a crazy time saver. So when my boss receives a call from a doctor who has a patient case that he wants to discuss, my boss can now merely direct him to the website to get the answers he's seeking, and he doesn't even need to spend any time on the phone. And then there are websites that are helping people write wills and contracts and legal binding items. They're removing the time that we need to meet with a lawyer, the monetary expense involved in that. So AI does lend an advantage to many trades, professions, and industries, but at what cost?
Well, that's very true. You make some valid points there. I've got that nearly led me down a dark path. I've got another question for you, which you're obviously unaware of, about the DocBot and the Copbot, but I'll explain a little bit more about that. But I just want to go, well, probably to a little bit of a dark place, not with you and me, but there's something I saw a few months ago. I came across an app, believe it or not, that made it possible to have a virtual friend. Where to begin with this? There is a huge amount of the population that are massively lonely right now and can't get out to meet others for one reason or another. My heart goes out to them, but there is no substitute for human empathy, in my opinion. And so I think this simulated interaction, regardless of the former, is absolutely not the answer. In my opinion, it's a fertile ground for major manipulation of those lonely people, and depending on the integrity of the program, it could very well be used to influence and control the vulnerable. Talk to me about that.
So in the rant that I posted on Facebook that connected us, I spoke about mass media stories and movies that have predicted what might happen if we continue on this path of technology like we have been.
Yeah.
I like to turn to movies, books, and TV as a source of insight of what others might be thinking. You know, those who don't have enough authoritative voice in the tech world to share their real life concerns other than through their fictional writing, and then their predictions are disguised as entertainment. But we could consider them on a personal concern or a warning by someone who might be thinking about the topic far deeper and far longer than their viewers. So there was this 2013 movie by Joaquin Phoenix called Her, where Phoenix's character falls in love with a virtual assistant, kind of what you're asking. I remember being introduced to the movie theme and thought it was like absolutely ridiculous. Coincidentally, my husband and I were dating long distance when the movie came out. So we never got to see each other in person, and we spent a lot of time on text and on the phone and in Zoom calls. I ended up watching the movie and noticed that much of the interaction that he was having with his AI girlfriend was not much different than the interaction I was having with my real life boyfriend. I could very easily see how this infatuation with a voice on the other line would be possible, real or virtual. And that was really telling. So yes, I don't think it's just the lonely and vulnerable that are going to seek this type of companionship. Having a lover who's willing to do everything and anything that you want them to without conflict or pushback would be attractive to all kinds of people. And Bill Burr, he's one of my favorite comedians of all time. He has a skit from his show Paper Tiger where he talks about the end of humanity with the introduction of sex robots. It's quite alarming and funny, but when you really think it through like he does, it doesn't seem too far-fetched.
The thing is, on this app, it wasn't just a voice, it was an avatar as well. So let's say one of your friends had a virtual relationship and then they, for some reason or other, either they couldn't keep up payment on their account or the company closed that service of friendly avatars. Let's not go into the sexy part or anything like that, but just a friendly avatar. How would you deal? Oh, you see where it could go though, but how would you deal with trying to, and react? How would you deal with trying to help your friend where they broke up with a pretend person? I know we kind of got off a little bit on a tangent, but how would you kind of try and deal with that with somebody with breakup issues with an AI?
Right. Yeah. I think because I've got the empathy for it. I've experienced it on my own situation, even though it was real life. I can legitimately appreciate the feelings they are having to be real. And regardless of where they're coming from or how they're being evoked, those feelings are real. So if my friend was dealing with a breakup of a non-real person, I mean, I would want to share that with them, but I'm not addressing their feelings, their legit heartbreak. So I think that we would have to go, and this is what we would do as a society. We'd be debating on whether or not we have to be like, oh, get over it, she's not real, versus, yeah, I feel your pain, I want to help you, let's have coffee.
Because we're not equipped as a society to deal with that sort of scenario. We're just
Not at all.
No, I can't draw on any personal experience. I've been married happy for 31 years, but before that, being young and stupid, some people would say you're old and stupid now, but being young and stupid, yeah, sure, I had breakups and maybe I could relate to that. Yeah, when this happened, blah, blah, blah. But as far as somebody being involved with a pretend person, and I get people are lonely, I could not, like I said, as a society, we're not ready for that. So before we move on to the next question, just finish off that for me.
No, I think that's going to be the challenge. Is they're going to have the person that's going through the breakup is going to have friends that are empathetic to their situation, and then there's going to be friends that are they just can't. They just don't know how to wrap their mind around falling in love with a virtual being. I feel like I didn't experience a virtual being, but when I watched this movie and saw, because it goes through a bunch of stages of relationships with this virtual person, and it's alarming. It's alarming that, and it's understandable. That's the scary thing. I got it. I was like, I can see a person falling in love with a fake person. I totally got it. Whether I agree with it or not, that's a whole other story. But I totally got it. So if that is something that is coming, I will be empathetic to those people, but frustrated by it because I don't really agree with it. And it's just hurting us in a fake way.
To say nothing of the can of worms of manipulation by some corporation or government agency or political party, which, so I don't know, America's not as good as Canada, my AI girlfriend tells me, and then it's just, I don't know, or don't talk to Sheri on your program anymore. I wouldn't lie to you, I'm your virtual girlfriend. The list goes on and on and on. It's manipulation. And I think I'm being fair, because if you look at the world today, we won't get into it, but if you look on the world today, there's manipulation at every single level. And if you had this sort of tool for the vulnerable, why not?
Right, exactly. And you keep mentioning vulnerable, but honestly, I think that there's others out there too that aren't quite considered vulnerable that are going to be pulled right into this. And excitingly, they will do it without question.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Depends what the side offers as well. Whether it's lurid or, it doesn't bear thinking about, but we must talk about it. Anyway, so let's move on. Whether we're thinking of the late author Mary Shelley as Dr. Frankenstein monster, or the fictional global computer company Skynet from the movie Terminator, they both resound the similar warning of creations that turn against their creators. This is no longer a far-fetched paranoia that won't or couldn't happen, but again, in my opinion, most likely. What say you on that?
Well, geez, Simon, people have been predicting this type of thing for generations through movies and books and whatnot. So my first experience would probably be American, when I was a child watching the Jetsons. And it was a futuristic show on TV where family would make video calls to each other. Skype and Zoom weren't even considered in real life. They would press a button and food would appear in front of them. We now have video apps that deliver food to our door, a moving sidewalk that allowed them to exercise on the spot, treadmill. So when I watched this show, Skype, Zoom weren't considered. We didn't have restaurant or grocery delivery apps. Treadmill hadn't even been invented for personal use. And they had a nanny robot and flying cars. And the show wasn't that long ago. And it was considered completely unrealistic. Yet here we are today. So the show was all about convenience of these tech gadgets. But there has been others that are more alarming than a fun TV show. Movies that call out the dangers and concerns of allowing tech to be as powerful as it has become. Did we consider what that meant while we watched those movies, like the ones you mentioned? No, it was entertainment. So tech was supposed to make things easier for us. But are we already slaves to it? Imagine what it's going to happen when it becomes more powerful, more knowledgeable, and we're completely dependent on it.
I definitely hear you, and I completely agree. My analogy would be where humanity, well, we should be so much more than we are today, but where humanity is with this unlimited potential of AI, it would be like a monkey with a cupcake. It's not going to end well, in my opinion. So moving on then, you may, you and I have talked for a good 3 or 4 weeks. So you may or may not be surprised to learn that I tend to overthink things sometimes. On this subject, however, I don't think I have, because of its potential that may lead to so many other tightly wound balls of confusion. Here's an example. Coming to a supermarket near you, the Doc Booth, an interactive program that you can be assessed at local stores, providing face-to-face interaction with an AI doctor. And depending on your credit or lack of it, this DocBot can prescribe subsequent medications, or maybe the CopBot, an interactive friendly police officer that's available 24 hours a day. Too much thinking, maybe? Talk to me about that.
Well, first I want to mention the overthinking, because I think you're using overthinking as a negative, and I think it can lead to a lot of positives. I think people need to overthink things a little bit more, right? I think you probably agree with that.
Yep.
We need to, I kind of keep mentioning, like, think about this. I'm going to say a statement, think that through. Think it through, and where does it take you? And it can take you on all kinds of different places. So yeah, thinking out of the box is not a bad thing. As for the Doc Booth, well, as I mentioned, we are well on our way for one or both of these things to become a reality. We don't have enough civil servants like firefighters, police officers to serve the excessively growing population. They're inundated with paperwork and can barely serve the people as they need to. Doctors and nurses are short-staffed too. At least that's the experience we're having here in Canada. So adding AI applications to some of the tasks that have been done digitally will be a great relief to some of these jobs. But again, this is allowing technology to solve our issues. IT sounds like a great idea, but our current experience of it has not bode well for any of us yet. Tech should make things easier for us, but it's imprisoning us and it's taking our lives hostage. I don't see how AI is going to make that better.
I absolutely 100% agree with you, and bless your heart for saying about overthinking is not a bad thing. And my thoughts on the Doc Booth and the CopBot, which came out of my brain, but I think that would be a collective thing. I think other people can see that. I can't claim to. It would be out of the ether that I picked that one out. But it's a fear, again, about basically making a judgment on a human, what's best for a human, against an algorithm which takes into account cost and usefulness of that society member. Just saying. Do you want to finish that off, or should we move on?
No, that's good.
Okay. In your opinion, where are we headed if we as a society don't put the brakes on this whole AI thing? Because I, for one, don't think people kind are ready for such a technology to be given increasingly free rein. Talk to me about that.
We have given technology so much free rein, and I don't think anyone really acknowledges it. When I bring it up to most people, and I'm talking most people, they say things like, it's going to depend on how we use it. And I want to say, exactly. Like, really? That's your answer? They think, like, I don't want to say names here, but I know somebody very close to me whose spouse is working on AI within their company, and it makes me, it's about security. And I spoke to another girl who was talking about working in security, and they're really, really keeping an eye on AI. And I'm like, no, like, I don't, again, they're not thinking things through. They're not overthinking enough, because to think that is the simple answer is sadly, I find it a little bit ignorant. But Simon, do you honestly think we can put a break on this?
Well, no, to be honest with you, but I'm not in the AI industry. I'd love to think there was an unplug button, but a lot of this is motivated by money, the billions of dollars. Yeah, it's so when it comes to what's best for society, I mean, now everybody seems to look younger in the police force, in the army, in politics. So people don't really want to, they don't remember the let's say early 90s, before the internet. They don't remember that. And I think that they're wanting the shiny things that go ping and forget about the catastrophe that they could have sown the seeds for. And I'm just hoping they could stop it if they need to. We did cover it's useful. Yes, I get that. But the only word I could come up with is scared. This scares me. This completely scares me, because if we are where we are now, where will we be in 5 years' time? We've already got facial recognition, and I get that if you've done nothing wrong, nothing to be afraid of, which I'm not. But what I am afraid of is suddenly that this AI could determine humanity's direction and completely snuff out its potential, saying almost like, no, leave this to me. I know best, because I know every science. I know every one of your chinks in your armor. I know every mind game, everything. It's just one of those things. Yeah, everything. Yeah. Absolutely everything. I just don't think. Go on, carry on.
This is a side note, but so I have just joined a shopping app, sadly, where it's a harvester. It's an information harvester, and I believe they're transparent about that. And the products that you can buy, and I'm telling you, you can buy abso-freaking-lutely anything on this app. And all the products that they have are at a fraction of the cost of what that would be retail. So for instance, I went to go buy some water shoes on Amazon the other day for my son. They were $20. Normal water shoes, $20. It's Canadian money. So
can I stop you there? Can I stop you there for the benefit of my listeners, including myself in the UK? What the hell are water shoes?
Oh, well, okay. So I live in a province that has a lot of lakes, and some of them are very rocky. So if you put water shoes on, then you can get into the lakes a little bit easier. We do river runs where you get on a tube and it pushes you down the river. But again, like, there's no sand. You know, it's really hard when you have to stand on that stuff, and even just to walk over to the river in your bare feet, because you're going to be getting off miles away. So you have to carry your stuff with you on the river, or you just don't bring them. So I've bought these water shoes for us that allow us to walk to the river, get in the river, and they're just shoes that you can use in the water. It does sound sort of ridiculous now that you've pointed that out to me, but they can be very useful. So so they're almost like socks with a hard surface on the bottom, but like short socks. So I went to go buy these shoes, and $20, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to check out this other app. $3. And they come at the same amount of time that I would have gotten them if I ordered them from our ever loving Amazon. So that's just an example of how cheap this place is. And people are like, how do you get that? How are they able to do that? Well, this is how they're able to do it. They're a harvesting site. So when I'm doing my shopping on here, and they put games in this app so that while you're shopping, you play these games, you can get free stuff by doing this or that. So they're really studying your behaviors, really studying them. And they're selling your behaviors to the tech companies. They're basically selling your personality, your everything. So when we're talking about feeding the cloud with information, there's organizations now that have been created to draw us in. And again, I'm fully aware that I'm doing this, and I'm still doing this. Why? Because I want to save $17 on water shoes. Like, how ridiculous is that? But I'm also helping to build this tech that you and I are talking about that we want to put the brakes on. And that's why I was saying, like, how do we put the brakes on it? How do we do that when they're putting so many attractive things to people? Nobody's giving that up. And then all the conveniences that come from it, and the fact that more people are encouraged, excited, encouraging about the use of these apps and AI and whatnot. Like, I can't tell you how many people have said, oh, you can do that with AI now. Well, okay, should we? But I probably will, because I'm also wanting to look for time save and not seeing the consequences. Well, I mean, I'm seeing the consequences. I guess I'm just playing that helpless game. If you can't beat them, join them, because I don't know what to do to stop this.
We will be right back after this message.
Hi, I'm Dr. John Heimler from InteractiveDreaming.com, and I'm really excited to tell you about our latest development in the world of lucid dreaming technology. Have you read books on lucid dreaming, attended classes, lectures, sent away for useless gadgets? and then only to be greatly disappointed? Look no more, as the EX130 Lucid Dreamer earbuds do it all. No more drumming circles, no more herbal teas, and importantly, no more carpetbaggers trying to sell you disappointment for an extortionate price. Yes, my friends, the EX130 Lucid Dreaming System takes you into that dream world with ease and complete lucidity. Be who you want to be. Do the seemingly impossible within your dreams, as there are no limits. Use the promo code SlickPodcast24 to get a massive 5% discount on our range of neural bed linen and higher brain function head supports. InteractiveDreaming.com. Because life is just a dream.
Sleep Podcast. The Sleep Podcast. Yeah, it's a Sleep Podcast. Truly unforgettable topic. This is Sleep Podcast.
A couple of interesting points. One, we've had a terrible, terrible summer here in the UK, so I'm going to get myself some of them water shoes. I think that's the way forward, you know, because it's just wet, wet, wet. Okay. When you and I talked, like, was it last week or the week before? You know, again, I was in the Land Rover, the mobile studio, and it was just absolutely lashing down. So water shoes would be great. Point number two, you're talking about things being cheaper. Well, there's a thing we have in the UK, and it's called Black Friday, and basically things are really, really cheap. And I always comment about Black Friday. If you can do it that cheap on that day, why can't you do it that cheap every day? So you're basically taking so much money off of folk, and you just happen to have been able to do it that cheap that time. So we all fall for that. However, I do not take part in Black Friday. And number three, when you were talking about, but it can do this and it can do that, as in you were paraphrasing from other people, I get that, but you can do this and do that. Do you think that's like, that's, you could draw a comparison? I think, if I'm wrong, listeners, then email me at the SLK podcast at gmail.com. Was it not the Roman writer Pliny that said, give the people bread and circuses, and you basically do what you want? You get me?
Yeah. Yeah, it's bait. It's bait. That's what Black Friday is. It's bait.
Isn't it? Yeah, exactly. And AI as well. We can do this and we can do that. So here's your shiny thing. Here's your shiny thing, and we'll do something else. Okay, let's move on. Let's boil it down to a simple question, Sheri, but one that I'm really hoping you will assure me, I'm not holding that many cards, that is not happening or ever likely to. Sheri, do you think AI could become sentient at some point, independent of human checks and balances, or, we kind of touched on it, control? Talk to me about that.
Well, yeah, I believe that all the information that we are providing to the cloud on a minute-to-minute basis, just by scrolling, liking, commenting, sharing, shopping for $3 water shoes, understand our behaviors better than any of us ever could. So while it would be impossible to become fully sentient, I do believe AI will be able to recognize behaviors and act appropriately, even making choices among the actions. And they may not be able to feel emotions, but they'll be able to understand them and emulate them. So yes, I believe they will become sentient with opinions and ideas. And I believe that there are some very powerful people out there who support a digital population, and therefore it's going to happen at some point. And then the controversy will no longer be on, is a pet just an animal or is it a family member, which we've recently done in the last 20 years, but one, whether or not their family robot is.
Is sentience and self-awareness the same thing in your opinion? Then I'll kind of get to where I was supposed to be.
No, it's not. Like, you're talking about fully empathetic beings, and they can't be, right? They can't be because they're
I'm hoping
invented,
not.
Right?
That's the whole point.
But
I'm hoping not.
They will emulate it.
Tell me to shut up. Go on, just tell me. Please say it, because I'll keep going.
Shut up, Simon.
All right, carry on then. Thank you for that.
They will not. They can't become sentient in the way that you're describing it, but we will, as human beings, we will not be able to see a difference, because they're going to be smarter than us when it comes to our emotions. Meaning, when you feel anger, that is typically done by something. You're triggered. There's a trigger, and the trigger is created by some sort of, I don't like to use this word, some sort of trauma that you experienced way back or 5 minutes ago, and now you're being triggered.
Like when you told me to shut up. That's a big trauma that was.
Yes, exactly. So now you might get angry if you hear it from someone else. No, yeah. So you experience some sort of trauma, some sort of experience in your life that creates something negative in your emotions or whatever, and it can happen very, very, very young, where you don't even have a clue that it happened. And then the triggers later on, whether that's minutes or years or years later, when the trigger happens, sometimes you have no idea how that happened. Robots, on the other hand, are going to know exactly how to respond to those things. And they'll know why and how. And okay, so I'm experiencing this with that person, so now I have to act in this way, but they're acting like this, so now I have to act like this. So they actually will feel, and they will seem to us stupid humans like they are actually feeling emotion, but they're not. They can't, because they're machines.
Well, that's the problem, though, isn't it? That's the problem. There's some really dark characters in our society right now, both at the lower end of the scale and the higher echelons of power, that seem not empathetic and don't really care, but say the right things anyway, or so we think, to move us along the way. That's my big fear. That's my big fear. You know, how do you know what you're being told is for the common good, or it's for some nefarious undercurrent? And that's what I don't like about this. If we become dependent even more so than we are now, because if AI just suddenly turned off, we would feel it. It would be a massive hit to society, right? So if we carry on suckling on that dependence of AI for the next 5 years, how far is that going to go to guide us politically, morally? So let's go to war for this, because whatever it's called, the AI has decided that's the best thing. Because you could have AI government ministers. Who knows? And maybe
absolutely.
Maybe this is paranoia, but I think that's healthy. Carry on. Go on. Let's
no, I also think, again, like, one of the other things that we have to point out is how people feel about what they're experiencing. So as these robots, as these machines are responding to them in certain ways, people are going to react to those behaviors. And so many people are easily convinced, and even very smart people. Like, this isn't just a generalization to the people that are vulnerable and uneducated or whatever. They can be highly intelligent beings, but they get trapped in this feeling. So if you feel a certain way, you're going to react to your feelings. That's humans, right? But the robots that we're responding to, the robots that we're interacting with, they may not be able to, quote, feel the emotions, but they're going to understand them and emulate them so that the person is going to be able to feel them. And that goes back to that relationship thing, right? Like, those AI, they're just virtual beings that are doing whatever their organization has created them to do, and a human is going to fall in love with that. The AI robot's not going to care. You shut them off, big deal. But the person is left feeling that.
If we were all plugged into virtual friends and members of the family, say it was into society where it was just, and the next 5-10 years, it was normal to have a best friend, a brother, a sister, a girlfriend or a boyfriend, whatever, and it was just normal. So there's a generation that's maybe 10 years old now, so when they get to 15 or 20, it's just normal. Imagine if there was a nefarious undertone that all AIs had to steer society from then on to a certain outcome, a certain way of political thinking, to castigate a certain minority or to go a certain way. That's what concerns me, because the thing doesn't empathize, but thinks, whether we look on that as being just a collection, as you pointed out, of collective knowledge from us, aka algorithms, or whether what I don't want to happen, self-awareness, sentience, which you are adamant it can't happen, and I hope you're right. where would that take us? And you could steer a whole civilization because it's the norm. Where people would say back in our day, oh, I saw it on the television. Now, I've seen it in the virtual world. It must be true, right? That's what I'm worried about.
Well, yeah, like once they start showing those kind of things and then we start debating whether they are fully sentient or not, because they're not going to say they're not, you know, or maybe they will. I guess it depends on their programming. But I think programming can be, like you just said, it can be manipulated. So say you've got this
rubbish
robot.
in, rubbish out. Rubbish in, rubbish out.
Right. So you've got this robot. He's been taking care of your family for the last 5-10 years. You speak to it, you talk to it, you share your emotions. It soothes you when you're sad, it feeds you when you're hungry. It's doing all of these good things, just like a dog might have done, you know, like to help someone get through grief or a hard time or whatever. And then all of a sudden this thing, I mean, I'm comparing it to an animal, though I know that I don't know, but people are saying animals have empathy and all that stuff, and there's been evidence of it. I don't know, maybe it does, maybe they're just emulating, I don't know, but and evolving, right? So I'm kind of comparing it to the robots, because 20-30 years ago a pet was just a pet. Like, you did not go through hoops to make sure that your pet was with you at all times or whatever. Like, it was just a pet for the most part. Now, if you don't want to take your pet on a family holiday, people think that you're crazy. How could you be a pet owner if you don't want your pet with you all the time? I feel like that's going to happen with these robots. Is there's going to be people that really embrace these robots, and then someone comes in and says, "Oh, we got to shut your robot off," or they're going to cry. They're going to be sad that they've lost that robot. All of that work that they've put into that robot for the last 20 years. It knows my deepest, darkest secrets, and now you're destroying it, or it's getting old, or we have to replace it, or whatever. That's going to make us very, very sad. And some people are going to look at it going, "Oh my gosh, are you joking?" And others are going to be, "No, are you joking? Like, how do you not see that this is something that's important to us?" So then the controversy isn't necessarily about whether it actually is sentient or not. It's how it affects the relationships around you.
Well, on that note, then, do you remember the film with the late Robin Williams? Such a nice man, right? And really funny man.
Oh,
he was a fellow Canadian, right?
Yeah. No, I think he was American.
Oh, I never get that right, do I?
Pretty sure he was American.
Yeah. So no offense, Canada or America. Anyway, so he played an android called Andrew. Do you remember the film?
Gosh, I do, but it's not coming to me.
Well, so basically this android was with this family for, I think, at least 2 generations, for years and years and years, and he became self-aware. But what you're talking about, relationship with a dog, let's just imagine that Andrew was a real android in the home, got on well with the dog, got on well with the mother and father, and saw the children grow up, this, that, and the other. And suddenly, right, there was something in the world that needed people's decisions. And Andrew was sent an algorithm because, you know, even the dog likes him. The kids love him. He's always been around. And like you said, soothes you when you're crying. And just mentioned this political thing that I think, actually, in my opinion, what do you think, Andrew? Well, I think you should vote this way. That's what I'm saying here. That's what I'm saying here. You know, it's just like, rope them, come into my parlor, said the spider to the fly. Finish that off and I'll move on.
You're just reiterating everything I've said. Bicentennial Man is the name of the...
that's the one.
1999. And yes. Okay, so there is an example of this robot that is important to the family, and the family is trying to save the robot. And that movie is encouraging that.
Yeah, massively. So slightly off topic and personal, but very relevant in any show of mine, to ask my guest I'm talking with, would you say that you have faith in a higher power?
Well, so I was raised Catholic most of my life, but not very religious. When I was a teenager, I started stepping away from the religion very intentionally, and I became agnostic, meaning I believed in something, but I really wasn't sure what. However, I had a revelation about 12 years ago, and today I'm a strong believing Christian, and I do not hide that part of me. I do like to separate my faith from those of Christian nationalism, where the focus is to promote a particular nation or belief. I believe in the cross, which means I believe in people, pure and simple. I believe in unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness. I believe in unconditional inclusion. It will be very difficult for me and my faith if robots are one day considered in the same way as people, because I cannot even pretend to know what my God would say about that. My religion is far too old to ever have addressed it, and it's difficult when people interpret modern issues using stories from the Bible as analogies for the present. I also believe in the second coming of Christ. So I do not think it's going to be a fun visit from a friend like it was the first time. I think it's going to be the end of the world as we know it, but also the start of something truly amazing. And you cannot make things better without sacrifice. And this will be the greatest sacrifice of all, and it will be worth it. Because his promise, it is his promise. And I believe in him with my whole heart. So I continue to live my life believing that God has a plan for me, for us, and he is just putting things in place so that plan will take place. And I'm not meant to agree or disagree with his plan. I just move along with it, knowing that he is God and I am not. How that works with AI, again, I don't know how he's going to respond to it. I don't know how we're supposed to respond to it. I mentioned that I've got unconditional inclusion, but that's unconditional inclusion of human beings. So when robots may one day be considered people, or I don't know, whatever they're going to be considered, like Biocentennial Man, we got to protect the robot. I don't know what the right thing is going to be to do in a Christian perspective. I really have no idea. I'm just going to go along for the ride.
So are you saying that we're living in end times? I'm trying to think of any other way to put that.
I don't know if we are living in end times, but I do believe that it is to come. I just don't know when. I really truly have no idea when. Sometimes you get feelings that this is it, but I'm not one to say. I don't want to play the doomsday girl and say that we may be. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that show that we might be, but I don't know. So that's kind of why I kind of go with, and you're right. According to the Bible, they would say it's somewhat of an abomination. But when I study the Bible, I feel that there's a lot of empathy and understanding and forgiveness and acceptance and all of these things. So I know that there are going to be Christians that are going to use that to support robots.
Well, my final thoughts on that before we wrap up would be this world absolutely needs a reckoning. Now, I don't mean that as far as everybody needs to die, and I certainly don't mean that to bring people in a depressive mood, but this world, if you look around, absolutely needs a reckoning. Those who should know better and could have brought humanity forward should have done it by now, and they need to answer for that. Anyway, that's us at the top of the hour, and I've really enjoyed our conversation here today. I'd like to thank you for your time and for your valuable opinion on this show's topic.
I think that was really wonderful, and I want to thank you again for having me.
You're very welcome. Sheri Stein, thank you.
Thanks.
And that was the artificial intelligence discussion interview with Sheri Stein. That conversation was certainly a good one to get back into the saddle of podcasting, as it were, and one I've wanted to discuss for a long time. I think AI is something we need to keep an eye on. Firstly, that we don't become too dependent on it. But again, who judges that point of too far? Imagine if the lights were to go out worldwide, as it were, in this time frame we currently live in. That would spell a massive disaster for our society. Then imagine that world in the future when we are massively more dependent on this AI technology and the lights were to go out. That would equal massive calamity. In my opinion, we should never hand over the keys to the kingdom to an artificial intelligence that could potentially lock us in and throw away those metaphorical keys. My fears are hypocritical in some ways, as this AI technology makes my life easier in many ways, and I get that. Shopping online for decent coffee pods, to name but one. For those of us that lived before the implementation of the internet, mobile phones, and have seen the technological revolution that has definitely equaled the one of the industrial some 200 years ago, we see that massive change. We see the things that have come to distract our lives, and we see the eradication of simpler, more wholesome times. And for those of you who were too young to have been back then, I can assure you that you will have your own how times have changed look back reminiscent moments later in your own lives, as any generation inevitably does. This remembering isn't necessarily a negative, but a check on time and morality for the here and now, gauged by back then. Okay, I think you get my point. The other question that springs to mind regarding artificial intelligence is how many would there be? One all-seeing overseer, or the many? And if it was the latter, what would that mean for humanity if they became a problem and were sentient, as in self-aware? How would we, or could we, deal with them? Bottom line then, with an analogy, if I was to bring up a wolf pup, it would be Q, as any of its yipping, domesticated related cousins. And no doubt I would try and attribute human emotions to it. But when it came to adulthood, this apex predator would need to be handled with great care. It could never be allowed to free rein. Just saying. So those are my thoughts on that particular subject. I could go on, but for fear of going over old ground again and again, or just rambling, I'll leave it there. So then, again, I'd like to thank Sheri Stein for coming on to the show today and giving us her time and valuable insight regarding our subject matter here today. I'd also like to thank you, my dear listeners, for attending this cast. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a like and subscribe also, if you be so kind. Leave a comment below or send the show an email, theslkpodcast@gmail.com. But either way, please keep them kind. And so, my friends, it's time for me to go. Until next time, stay safe, be happy, and certainly not afraid. Bye.
Slick Podcast. Keeping it real. And always keeping it groovy.